So, welcome to this week. And we are just getting going live. And this is where I really just need to be able to keep my other sound silenced. But let's get going. So, my name is Karen Judd Smith, and I'm super excited to join you today. To have you join me for this special training. Now, this training might begin to use a little bit of language, put out some counterintuitive ideas. And some of these things might at different times cause a little bit of a brain freeze. But all of that is because we're about to get into how to handle what could be called a shit show of life at this time. Now, that is, we're in a world that is very uncertain. It's increasingly complex. It's volatile. I mean, things can blow up overnight in ways that, and we hear about it in ways that we never used to before. And so we have learned how to be comfortable and to function at some level, and now we're being hit left and right with all of these changes that we're not always ready to handle. And this is also one of the challenges for us, is that it's affecting all of our relationships. It's affecting our businesses. It's affecting our clients. It's affecting our family members. It's affecting our loved ones. It's affecting even those most potent relationships that we've had, that we have, and that we felt or always felt were just so steady and always there. So, are you faced with colleagues, with businesses, with clients that are edgy, to say the least, if not trying to even pull out of deals because they're scared about what's going on? And consequently, you're also trying to hang in there, deal with your own fears, your own emotions, your own concerns, your own uncertainties. And yet you know that you need to keep moving forward, yet everything is pulling you back. We talk about the new normal as if the normal of the past is what is something desirable, and that we are trying to find a new way to handle that discomfort that we're living with. Anyway, all of this is to say, we are in a world where this time, the 1st of February, 2023, do we know where we're going to be? Can we even anticipate it in the ways we used to be able to? It was normal a few years ago to have 5-year plans for your life, for your business, for your studies, whatever area of things you're in. But it's not that way anymore. Still, you have things you want. I have things I want. You have preferences. You have ideals. You have hopes. You have aspirations. How do we still hold on to those? Find a way forward in the midst of all of this uncertainty? And then how do we build the capacity to operate well in this environment? And this is what we're dealing with in this and some of our other trainings. So that's just the kind of the blurb to get you oriented a little bit with what I want to look at, not just the nicey nice stories about how we can go out, make a plan, build a strategy, and then simply work on it. Whether you're a team leader, a business leader, a parent, whether you are somebody who simply wants to lead your own life in a meaningful and a way that's meaningful to you, there are some things some handles that we need to get better on things. And while I'm going to be sharing a number of things with you today, the point of me sharing these things with you is to build your capacity to operate more effectively in the reality of the world as it is today. not the way we wanted it to be, not the way it was, but how to be that kind of a leader of our own lives, a leader of our teams, where we know what needs to be done. Well, even there, sometimes we're not even quite sure about that one. That's a slightly other point here. But part of what I really want to look at today is the dynamics of a relationship and what is really going on inside you, inside me, so that when we get to understand that more realistically, then we are able to accept the reality of where we are and then move it forward. Without some level of acceptance, even though it's uncomfortable, even though we don't like it, even though we don't particularly even want it to be that way, unless we can accept where we are, then we can't even figure out the first real step forward. We're just dreaming. Now, I'm a dreamer too. But when it comes down to taking steps, we need to be very specific, intentional, and clear. So let me get into this a little bit, and I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can get to look at some of the points that I'm making and absorb some of them through words. I haven't gotten too many pictures, but there's one that I really want you to pay attention to. Because again, these are things that in your own mind's eye are really helpful for you to understand, even as you are moving forward in the midst of uncertainty. When we have that kind of clarity about where we're going, even when we don't like where we are, it makes a massive difference. So sometimes we just have to simply accept that, as you know, as I know, we don't always like where we are, but rejecting the reality of where we are does not necessarily help us deal better with it. So that's what we want to look at today, is some of the underlying elements of what we're really dealing with. So let me share my screen, and I think you're going to be able to see this. And let's get going. So I hope that you're able to see this. It says I'm sharing my screen. I certainly hope so, because that is what I really want you to be able to see. Okay, so let me just do one thing here. I want to see if I can, I can't see what I think you can see, and I want to make sure that you can, not that, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to do that. But anyway, that's just the way it is. Okay, so let me go on anyway. So this is really just about setting you up for success in relationships. It's from the Ultimate Negotiators Formula, and there's reasons why setting you up for success in relationships is fundamental to negotiating. Why? Putting it very, very simply, is because all of your negotiations are going to be person to person. Now, yes, they might be on Zoom, they might be over the phone, they might be halfway across the world, but they're going to be person to person. I'm looking at the mindset. Why? Because how we approach this is fundamental to what we get out of it. And when you approach something, as you know, when you approach something with a mindset of fear or a mindset of confidence or a mindset of understanding or a mindset that gives you the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and the resources to really feel what's going on, it makes an enormous difference to what you're able to do in that relationship. So, but we're beginning with the mindset. And so this is just a little bit of an introduction about this. And paying attention to those moments when the stakes are high. Okay, a big aha? Maybe not in this. Why are the big ahas not necessarily the ones that you'll carry with you into every moment of every day? Because they're not always the thing you're sitting around waiting for those big ahas. Whereas when you get small little things that when you implement them, they make in time a massive difference. Now, in fact, that's kind of a big aha of its own kind. But anyway, so I'm not Tony Robbins. I'm not Simon Sinek. I'm not Dale Carnegie, Jay Abrams, Brene Brown, Seth Godin, any of these folks. Many of you may not have even heard of me. And that's okay. I want to give you 3 pieces of information. And I want to give you what they mean for your relationships, your business negotiations. Now, some of these things, these pieces of information, these perspectives, you'll have heard elements of that in Dale Carnegie, Tony Robbins, any of these guys. And that's because, yes, they're brilliant. They're big names. They've intuited a lot of these things. They've taught us to address many of these underlying or hidden pieces to success. And that was even before the science of neurobiology could explain them. And some of these people who are still alive and working and now pulling all of this into their content as well. But I wanted to ground this in something that really is connected to who you are, who I am, and who each person is that we deal with. So why are these 3 things keys? And they're really about who we are engaging in each relationship, in each negotiation, in each encounter. It's important because we need to know what we're up against. We need to understand what we see and hear and what we can't see and hear. So just very, very quickly, have you ever had to negotiate with a bank, a partner, or your board, ask a roommate to move out, resolve custody or visitation issues with an ex-spouse, deal with a rebellious team, talk to a team member who isn't keeping commitments, discuss problems or differences around sexual intimacy? Or perhaps you had to confront a loved one about a substance abuse problem, talk to a colleague hoarding information or resources. Have you ever heard of any of it? Have you ever had to do any of these things? Have any of these difficult conversations? Ask your in-laws to quit interfering, give an unfavorable performance review, talk to a coworker about a personal hygiene problem. Did you ever? Or did you avoid? Or did you face it, but then end up handling it poorly? Or did you routinely, confidently handle it well and get the best out of each of those situations? No, maybe they wouldn't have all absolutely gone the way you wanted them to, but in the end, you sit back and you realize, well, that went as well as it probably was ever going to. So each situation, you're going to deal with it in one of these 3 ways. You're going to either avoid it, you're going to face it and handle it poorly, doing your best you can, of course. Or because you understand the dynamics, you go in with a confidence that you can go in and face that situation as volatile or as uncertain as it is and handle it as well as is humanly possible. Now, I want to spend 5 minutes with you introducing you to your brain. Now, maybe that sounds a little bit funny. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But it's important that you understand what's going on under your own hood. Did I say that the right? Under your own bonnet, if you're back in Australia. So part of this is because we have a lot going on inside each one of us. The people you sit across the table from or are sitting next to in in a negotiation, in a business, in your family. They have a lot going on underneath their hood as well. Just thinking about it really quickly for a moment, how much of what goes on in your head, the thoughts you have, the ideas you have, the things you want, the things you long for, the things you are afraid of, how much does any other person on the face of the earth know all of those things? So how much do you think you know all of the things that are going on inside the person that you say perhaps you've lived 30, 40, 50 years with them? Do you still really know all that's going on under the hood? Perhaps not as much. Now, then you know, I know, I've experienced, I suspect you may have too, that there have been moments in your life when you were moving along and all of a sudden something triggered you. Something hijacked some part of you, a memory, a smell, a feeling, the words, the attitude somebody else had towards you that reminded you of another situation. You got hijacked. You got, all of a sudden, everything came rushing back from a previous experience, your own version of, a small version of PTSD. And PTSD is oversimplifying something that is very real and an enormous challenge for so many people who've been through extreme trauma in their lives, and for very real reasons they have that trauma. But even at smaller and smaller light, PTSD light levels, we all get triggered. We all have those moments where we get hijacked. And then what is it that we do about it in those moments? Do we understand what's going on? Do we have a plan for those moments? Do we have what I like to call is your personal crisis response plan? And that's something we can look at, how to set that up, how to do that. That's a whole other thing to do another time. But the point is, are you ready for it? Do you have a plan, or do you just wing it again? So let me get back. Let me get back to this, the slideshow again. And share my screen. I don't need to know about this. Sorry, I'm just, for some reason, I keep getting a pop-up that is not giving me the option to share the screen. There we go, finally. It's all about selecting the right thing. Okay. So the point is I did want to spend those couple of minutes introducing you to your three brains, because it helps us understand what it is that we can do, not just to see and to notice and to be aware, but then so that we can move forward in these steps and figure out what it is that we can do about it. So I guess I hope that you are there. So we jumped into our three brains. This is the slide of the three brains. Part of why I do this, now I just want to preface this by saying that our brain is not structured. Well, it is structured in this way, that I'm talking more about function than actual structure. So there's not 3 layers of the brain. There's not 3 specific areas of the brain, but it's more looking at things from an evolutionary perspective that helps us understand some of the dynamics that are going on within us as we engage one another, as we live our lives. And so these, what I call the core human elements that are at play, they are always at play to the extent that we are alive, living and breathing. Our brains are integrated. Who we are is integrated with what is going on inside our bodies. Separating the two is close to being impossible. And there's lots of fun stuff to really talk about, about our consciousness and awareness and how, the relationship between quote unquote mind and body. Are we really mind, or is the body really mind, or is the mind really body? Lots of questions about that. But this is a way of looking at and understanding yourself, myself, and those around us. So first of all, there's our survival component. And that's, yes, it's kind of based in our reptilian complex. Some call it a lizard brain. I like to call it lizard brain. I like lizards. And part of it is just that it's a very reactionary part of who we are, and it happens fast. We don't think these things into play. It's a deep core response that our bodies, our survival mechanisms, our innate being does. It's fast. We don't think these things are happening inside. We have triggers of cascades of chemicals in our system before we even think about having that happen. And that's just simply a reality of who we are as human beings. Another major area of who we are as human beings is our social. Generally speaking, the limbic brain, or that neomammalian complex that handles emotions and memories. Again, it's fast. We don't think these things to happening. We don't tell ourselves to memory. We can engage in memorization activities, but the fundamentals of forming memories, of having emotions, those are things that happen because of who we are as human beings, because of the way our brains function, the firing of the neurons, the cascade of hormones, and just the way our brains are structured and work. So again, this piece, this social piece, where we can't help but we want to be with others. When we don't have that social component in our lives, there's something missing. There's some parts of us that are not nurtured. There's almost a malnutrition that goes on inside us as a human being when we can't socialize and engage in the ways that stimulate our brains and our senses and our bodies in meaningful ways, socially meaningful ways. Again, the important thing here is that this is another fast part of the functioning of our brain. Now, I know we like to think that, we think pretty fast. We think faster than what we can read. We think much faster than what we can speak. But in the bigger picture, our strategic, our logical, language-based executive brain is so much slower than our survival and our social parts of our brains. So I want you to, in a sense, see this brain, sometimes I call it the L1, L2, and L3, the lizard, the limbic, and the logical parts of our brains, always at play. And the chances are that those 3 are not always in perfect balance. They might be when we're in a flow of kind, but most of the time there's a slight imbalance one toward another, toward one or away from one or the other two. So there are going to be moments when we're totally focused or more responsive, reactive, because our survival is kicking in stronger than the other two. Sometimes we're able to, our executive brain is able to contain and refrain, our survival and our social components and keep a balance of sorts toward, maybe moving toward a flow. But bottom line, majority of the time, one will be slightly accentuated more than another. That's just to allow you to see how in any moment, you, me, your negotiating counterpart, your significant other, your child, your parent, your business, your boss, your business partner, your team member will be settled a little bit more in their survival area, or maybe their social, and getting away from their strategic or logical, rational part of their brain. And this happens in these shifts between these emphasis of areas, but they're all at play all the time to greater and lesser degrees. But I want you to be aware that these are at play to help you have a sense of the dynamics of what's going on in the other as you sit across the table from them, or as you scratch your head saying, what on earth is going on with them? You already have what it takes to have a better understanding. And why I say understanding is because these first two, the survival and the social elements that work very, very fast, happen at that faster rate, and are oftentimes below the surface of what we think is going on. I want to underscore that you have understanding. It's like the top of the iceberg. That's the logical part. We think, why are they not being so logical? Or that doesn't make sense. Or I hear what they're saying, and you know that something else is going on, but there's all that depth underneath the water that you can't see, that you don't understand completely. But looking at it this way, survival, social, strategic, you've already got a much better handle on understanding that there are drivers that are pushing towards our survival and that quickly respond to fear and loss. That's the mechanism, the fundamental mechanism of survival is fear and loss. And one of the core drivers, even of our strategic brain, if you notice, interestingly enough, logic and reason is, in a way, many ways, a lot about kind of almost mechanistic control. So when we set up systems, logical systems, then when something else comes into play, we want to tamp it down. We want to keep it within the confines of that logical, rational structure. Control, motivated often by our executive part of our brain, is also a very powerful driver in all of these things. I just wanted to drop that out there for a moment. So let's continue on. Let's break that down a little bit and what that might mean for what to do in our relationships. And so I want to today I just want to look at it in terms of when we ask something of another. Now, almost any time we enter into a discussion of some kind, there is some kind of ask. And it might be hidden, it might not be obvious, but there is some kind of ask. We're either pursuing some kind of knowledge or insight, or we're wanting for them to come and do something with us, or we're wanting to find out something from them so that we can better understand what it is that we might do or might do better or might do for another. There are many, 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 many mixed negotiations, but the reality is anytime we enter into a discussion of some kind, there's some push-pull, there's some kind of ask involved. And that's what we want to look at here. What are some of the underlying dynamics of this ask, so to speak? Now, taking it for a moment have you ever been in a situation where somebody comes up and asks you something? I mean, duh. But anyway, so I suspect you have. Okay, so now, depending on the way they approach, if they're asking you for something obvious, they're asking you for information. It could be easy. It's not proprietary information. You know, it's not important. It's not sending off any alarms or triggers or anything. Whatever, and it doesn't worry you. But when the stakes are a little bit higher, and when you know that there's a lot hanging on on some kind of a dialogue, some kind of a conversation, you know that the other person, are they thinking about what can they do for you? Is that your first place that you go when somebody comes up to you and asks you for something? You're probably thinking a combination of what is it they want and what am I going to get? Now, if somebody's coming to you in a business situation, and if you're going to have any kind of opportunity to move the conversation from one of feeling one another out and getting a sense of the other to one where you're going to begin to work together, either as a vendor, as a client, as a partner, whatever way, shape, or form. You know that one of the first thing that's going to be in front of mind, front of house, front of mind, is going to be, how are you going to help me meet my needs? They're going to be concerned about protecting what they've got, because we don't like to lose things. That's one of our fundamental drivers. And we want to make sure that we're not going to lose control of any situation or circumstance that we know we currently are in control of. Safety and control are fundamental drivers for each one of us. And it's important to understand this is what is foremost, even if they're not thinking those words, because these things are, a lot of the time, they're just so innate to us. We don't even have to think about them, because this is our brain. This is how we function. This is who we are. These are those three brain elements that we bring into each moment. But it's important to remember, for you to remember what's in their head. How that they're looking at you, not with, oh, sure, whatever is mine is yours, but how are you going to help me meet my needs, whatever my needs might be. They might be financial, they might be safety, they might be security, they might be some form of legitimacy, they might be some form of respect and authority. Who knows exactly? You know that the situational reality, that the situation, circumstances, people, you know that situation. But what I'm talking about is understanding the primary concerns that they have, and understanding this helps you guide the relationship towards an outcome that is better for both of you. Now, in that situation, when the person is perhaps not so well known by you, or something that's maybe more obvious, when it's somebody, if that person across the table from you is somebody that you already know, you even like them and you trust them, depending on the topic that you're raising, they still might not trust you about the specifics of that topic or that particular issue. You may love them, but on that issue, do they really believe? Do they really trust you in that area? So you're already in the business of building trust and showing competency in that situational reality. Remembering that their first fundamental thoughts are, how are you going to help me? I don't care how wonderful a person they are. That instinctive, if they've controlled it over there, like, if they're the Dalai Lama, maybe he's, practiced that over the years and has trained and kept that personal desire down to a minimum. But I can guarantee that even the Dalai Lama, at some very fundamental level, has concerns. His body, at least, has concerns about survival and control, and will be going about ensuring through a homeostatic relationship, through food and warmth and sustaining that homeostasis within himself at a fundamental level. He is also walking into each situation with a question about, how is this going to help me meet my needs? Do I need to raise my bodily temperature? Do I need to cool it off? The need of that homeostatic need. But, I sidestep a little here. But anyway, the point is, I don't care who you're speaking to. If they are human, at some level, to varying degrees, the first concern, and when we're entering into an area of a discussion about something that is very pressing and unknown to us, uncertain for us, then these things come out all the more. How are you going to help me meet my needs? And so immediately, we, as the person sitting across the table from that person, are in the business of building trust on that issue, or trust, period, with that person, and showing our competency in this area of concern. Now, if we're really in a peer-to-peer engagement process here, we have to at least show that we are genuine and interested and accepting of who they are and respectful of who they are, their thinking, their ideas, in order that we can be competent as a dialogue partner, as a conversational, as a friend, as somebody who is genuinely engaged in a relationship with them and concerned for them and ourselves. So we have to show, bare minimum, our competency as a partner in dialogue, as a conversational partner, as a friend to them. So these first steps. First of all, we need to accept, align, and empathize. Now, we can dig into these a whole lot more, but even just taken at face value, when you accept the other where they are, believe me, that can be really hard. I'm sure you know that can be really hard. And much of the time, we actually want to reject where somebody is. We don't like where they are. And yet, in order to lead and guide a conversation that is going to bring us to a point where we can both contribute and end up with a much better outcome than either one of us could have achieved alone. Accepting where they are, helping, why I put in there, aligning, so that as we accept and align ourselves with that reality, and we do that in part by empathizing, by reaching out to them and feeling their heart, so to speak, hearing their voice and their concerns, taking a breath and not having to have them hear us, but taking enough of a breath and being willing to take a moment and pause and listen is an essential first step to building trust. Do you trust somebody who won't listen to you? Who won't hear the end of your sentence? Who won't dare even articulate back to you what you just said to them because it scares them, or they've got no time to think about it, or they're already thinking about what they want to say next back to you? Do you feel heard? Do you feel understood? And when you're feeling that way, how much do you trust them in that moment? How is the dialogue going to move forward? Does it move forward at that point into a more collaborative exchange, or do you keep pulling back, saying, now is not the right time? This is not the right person. I can't deal with this. And yet, any situation that has initiated a conversation is because while there may be tensions, there may be differences, there might be unknowns, the objective of that discussion was in the first place to end up with something better than what either party had alone. That's the purpose of having a dialogue, of reaching out to another, to share, to give information, to get information back, because we want to create that kind of synergistic relationship, that kind of energy that allows us, that through the give and take of discussion, to come up with something different than when we began. So if we start pulling back because we don't trust, that's not success. That's not the way you build a business. It's not the way to build a relationship. It's not the way for a discussion to come to some new, innovative, insightful, aspirational outcome. So the first thing that we really need to do is, number one, to accept, align, and empathize, to take that breath. And sometimes this accept, align, and empathize can be done very, very silently on your behalf, on the one. And sometimes it really does require that one of the two parties take enough of a breath to lead the discussion into new territory. So see this accept, align, and empathize as a very important piece, that you taking this on is you leading this dialogue, this leading your life into a new relationship, sometimes leading the other into new opportunities along with you, together, because it's not done alone. Number two, insight. And this is where it's important for you to use your expertise to provide situational insight. And so what does that mean? In each situation, in any one particular situation, the insight that you're really looking at is unique. It's not new in every situation. It's not it is new in every situation. It's different in every situation. So even if you're an expert, oh boy, I just got distracted there. But anyway, sorry about that. The point here is to use your expertise to provide situational insight. So for the other person, what that means is to use your own expertise to help them understand what they are facing. Now, in a situation, I'm going to be talking to some real estate agents later on today, so I've been thinking about this one. So for example, you might say, well, look, this is the deal. We're in an extreme seller's market, and this means there is lots of competition. You're setting the scene. You're giving them, you're starting to draw a picture of what the circumstances are that they're facing. Then you continue on showing that you have some insight into the situation. You don't have to have all the answers. That gets worked out as you move on down the road. But to get past the first milestone, it's important to be able to show that you have some expertise, some understand, and in some relationships, it won't be an issue of expertise. It'll be a matter, well, it might be an expertise in being a good discussion partner, a good friend. And so you've got to find a way to show them that. So back to this real estate situation. So then you can continue on, but it also means this insight that you're providing, it also means that those who are really ready, they're the ones who can walk away with the house keys. Now, what you're doing there is you're providing like a direction, looking forward. You shifted it from where they are now, the fear, the concern, the lack of inability to feel trust, whatever it might be, to where you're showing a pathway forward. You're using your situational insight to show that. And then the R, this third step that I'm referring to here, just in this outline of the underlying dynamics of effective relationships, is that you need to add in there some reasoned, tangible solutions. Again, you're not solving everything yourself, because that is the work of the dialogue. That is the point that we need to get to when two partners are working together. But in establishing some kind of, so to speak, proof that you understand the situation, you have the capacity to help bring them through what they currently fear as an almost impossible situation, or just one so fraught with all kinds of unknowns, fears, and concerns. It's important for you to guide their thinking. And part of what you're doing through this next step is guiding their thinking toward their hopes and dreams. And you do this with a how. And what that does, by guiding them toward their hopes and dreams, it reconnects them. It helps take them out of their fears and into their aspirations. People can't live forever in their fears. Even if a fear arises, it will go away. Though we can't stay perpetually afraid. When we do stay long time, when we've got that cascade of all of those chemicals in us, they turn to cortisols, and our adrenals get wiped out and all that kind of stuff. But even there, that's just an ongoing heightened level of activation of those parts of us. The point here is emotions come and go. Your fears will rise and fall. Even if you sit with a fear for a bit of time, it will wane. We cannot sustain it We can't remain adrenally hijacked all the time. So what we're doing here is we've acknowledged the fear, we've acknowledged the pains, the difficulties, the challenges. We've shown through providing that insight that, yes, we have some foundation, we have some competence, we have the ability that is needed to take this relationship forward in a meaningful way. And then we need to get back to helping reconnect them to their hopes and dreams. And we do this again with the how. For example, today is the 1st of February. And if you work with me to get all of your ducks in a row, we will have you marking your closing or settlement dates on your calendar for the house that you love within a month of you finding it. What you're doing is you're getting people to, you're not telling them how this, well, you're not telling them the how of every step of the way, but you're guiding your thinking with this is how we're going to do this in this particular instance. And you're telling them essentially that when you work with me, when you align with the things that I ask all of you, if you work with me, perhaps we'd say is when you work with me to get all of your ducks in a row, we'll have you marking your closing settlement dates on your calendar for the house you love within a month of you finding it. You've taken them on a journey through these 3 steps. You've acknowledged their fear. You've accepted them. They felt accepted. You're empathizing because that's essentially what's going on here. This acceptance and alignment with where they are is an empathy that allows them to feel you are with them. Then you bring in the fact that you know what they're facing and what they're dealing with. And it indicates that you're utilizing your resources as an expert in your field, as an expert friend, as a parent, as whatever it might be. Then we move on into the reasoned, tangible solutions, engaging all aspects of their brain in a way to guide their thinking towards the goal that they really want. Part of the challenge here is finding ways to get people to shift their minds away from the focus on the problem and being the problem experts, what I call a problem expert, to getting them to focus on what it is that they want and how to build that. And this is what we are doing here. We're giving them a pathway. Now, if we're just having 2 people having a conversation over a difficult issue, the chances are either of us alone are not going to be able to solve that alone. We're in discussion because we need them to be contributing, participating, joining us in this discussion, in the solution, in the outcomes. The point is we are those social beings. We all do have that social aspect of us. That's how we build our lives. That's how we build our world. That's how we build our business. So bottom line, this is where we're moving through we're almost moving through the 3 stages of the brain. We're recognizing the fear, we're showing our competence and our capacity to relate to them and be with them and be helpful to them, and then guide their thinking toward the goals, their aspirations, their outcomes, using some of the logic and the reason. But in the end, all of this is because we need to get to the point. The whole point of these first 3 steps are really to get to a commitment where we will then begin the real work of nutting out the nuts and bolts of what's going on, what needs to go on in order for us to bring this whole deal, whether it be a hard discussion, the agreement to become the buyer or the seller, and I be your agent, or vice versa. Whatever agreement, first steps agreement. There are a number of milestones in getting to some kind of desired outcome. But if we can't even get past these first steps of that first encounter, when our fears are at front and center, then we can't get to the part that can be really fun, even if there are difficult stages along the way. And that's where we get to the place where we can create solutions that are far better than either one could either have possibly imagined alone, or they happen far faster, or the synergy of the relationship that is grounded in trust, that is grounded in a genuine relationship between two people or two parties of people, can be remarkable. I've seen it happen time and time again in relationships between significant partners, family relationships, in business relationships, in negotiations between boss and employee, between partners in businesses. The dynamics, the movement on through this is what is from the place where we're encountering one another, acknowledging the fear, the underlying elements, and understanding those elements deeply below, and using that to help us guide and move the relationship, not pushing emotions out of the relationship, not denying the reality of those things, but understanding them and then guiding them into a new path going forward. So that is, I think that's now. Still, that was just a very not so quick, but anyway, that was a review of the three fundamental steps that are going to be at play in almost any dialogue and relationship. They can be at play in your first encounters when you meet somebody, and we can strip that right down to something as simple as you've got 7 seconds, and that's a way of, as I said, stripping those first 3 steps, the air steps, giving you air to breathe, in allowing a relationship to live and to grow. Those first 3 steps are at play under, just like those first, our 3 brains are at play in almost in every situation, frankly. It's so important that we understand that these are the underneath almost everything. When we do, and as we begin to see them at play, when we learn to then not just manipulate them, but to genuinely appreciate those aspects of the dynamics in relationship, it opens up a whole new world of what even difficult conversations can become. You don't have to be afraid of difficult conversations. We don't have to be fearful of hard negotiations, because then we can start to put specific questions, specific little scripts, little mini maps that I call them, into each of these situations, because they're built upon these core 3 steps of building relationships, of making use of the human element that is present and at play in all of us all the time. So I'm going to leave it at that for today. I hope that perhaps this has been, maybe of some use. of some interest to you, but I can pretty much guarantee if you are to just remember even this one, let me go back, and I'm going to pull this one screenshot back up again and just have you see these three pieces. It's, in a way, it's so simple, and in a way it's like the core of almost anything that you're going to be dealing with as a leader, as a parent, as an entrepreneur, as a tech, as a real estate agent, as a coach, as anybody, because these human elements are always in play. As I close out today, I just want to say, if anyone has an interest in understanding more deeply and then learning the specific steps that, or of having somebody to take you by the hand and walk you through the learning, the utilization, and the application of these simple points that really play out in our lives, just go to transilience.io / and then apply. And you can apply to participate, to have me coach you in an area of leadership, or your ability in pretty much any area, wherever you, as a person, as a leader, have to encounter other people that can give you an edge in your leadership capacity so that you can be more successful. Again, Transilience, TRANSILIENCE.io /apply, and set up an appointment, and we can talk about what options there are for you. That's about it. I hope that you've enjoyed this moment today where we've gone over these things, and I look forward to, I think I will be having another training program, another training session next week on exceptional.tv. The following week, we're going to be having a really exciting interview between a solo developer of a VR game and a person who's in charge of about 1,000 students who are involved in an innovation lab in Sydney, Australia, and where they are utilizing and training people to become the VR developers, the virtual reality developers of in the future. And this whole world of virtual reality still done well will actually pay attention to these fundamental issues of the human brain, who we are, and the human element at play in life. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again next week. This is Karen Judd Smith signing off from Insight and